Did you know that 61% of pet owners feel more prepared to be a good pet parent after testing with Embark? Embark your dog with Embark's dog DNA test to get hundreds of actionable health insights. You can be proactive with their health and work with your vet on a personalized care plan. Go to embarkvet.com and use promo code DOG, that's D-O-G, to get $65 off an Embark Breed and Health Kit or Purebred Kit with free shipping. That's promo code DOG to save today.
Turn your love of babies and bellies into cash. If you love babies and bellies and want to provide care and support to families, then Bibo Mia's webinar is the right place for you. Get answers to those burning questions like how to be the voice you wish you had at your birth and how babies and families can be supported by doulas. Learn all about the different kinds of doulas. You can work in fertility, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, or just enjoy working with those squishy babies. Supporting families by becoming a birth worker, aka doula, is perhaps an option that hasn't even crossed your mind, and that's why we want you to join this webinar. You can have great earning potential while doing something you love. Bibo Mia is the one-stop shop for education, community, and mentorship. Reserve your spot today at bibomia.com/free webinar.
Hello, you guys. This is our very first ever holiday edition. I decided that the month of December, we are going to put out 2 episodes a week. So I'm so excited today to bring you the first one. And this is a dear friend of mine. Her name is Olga. And you guys, she is amazing. She's a powerhouse mom, that is for sure. She graduated from Harvard. She's been featured in Forbes magazine with 30 Under 30, 40 Under 40 with Cranes New York. She has run an insanely successful business. She raises 3 kids. She's an amazing wife, amazing person. So amazing. I'm so honored to have her here with us today. And she has a story to share with you that we haven't heard for a long time. And it's going to be a Breech VBAC. So I'm so excited to hear her story. But of course, we have a review of the week. So before we do that, I am going to review on our course, actually. And this is from Erin Stanton. And she says, I absolutely love this doula training course. I feel far more prepared on the unique needed of the family planning of VBAC birth. Thank you so much for creating this resource for birth professionals and families. So thank you, Erin. And if you guys did not know, we have a course for both preparing parents that are wanting to know their options for birth after cesarean. And then we offer an education course for doulas and birth workers who want to learn more about the unique needs of a VBAC parent and a VBAC family. So unfortunately, we talk about this all the time that we are just people going in to have babies just like everybody else. But because we have that previous cesarean, unfortunately, we have this unique part where we are viewed a little bit differently in most of the medical world. So if you are wanting to dive in and learn more about your options for birth after cesarean or how to support your birthing clients, definitely check out the website at thevbaclink.com.
You are tuned into the VBAC Link podcast with Megan Heaton, who is a longtime doula and VBAC mom herself, here to help you get inspired for birth after having had a C-section. Along with this podcast, the VBAC Link offers blogs, resources, and a comprehensive VBAC course for both parents preparing for birth and doulas wanting to take their VBAC education to the next level. Be sure to follow Megan and her team on all social media platforms for even more. Although these podcast episodes are VBAC specific, it is encouraged for all expectant moms to listen and educate themselves on how to avoid a C-section from the get-go. The purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. It is not meant to replace advice from any other qualified medical professional. Here is your host, Megan.
I'm actually the person who took a class too. So
yes, you did.
And I love the course. And actually I did it with my husband, which was really helpful for him to feel more comfortable for the birth. So definitely highly recommend it. I know you didn't ask my opinion, but I do highly recommend the course.
I love your opinion. And it is so important. My husband personally, he didn't want to do any of the birthing courses with me. He wasn't super interested in it. He just didn't understand it way back when. And now he's like, oh, I totally get it. But it's so awesome to do with your significant other or your birthing partner, because VBAC definitely has some things and some scare tactics and just some interesting things that come along the way. And so if your partner can be as educated as you are, you're not feeling left like you have to defend your reason of why you do or don't want to do something. And so it's so great for you guys to be in the collaborative space. You guys know you're educated equally, and then you guys can support each other because they need support too.
Totally. And your course is awesome because it was self-paced. So we actually broke it down into like 30 minutes. We did whenever our toddler was sleeping, and we did it on Saturdays together. And I think it brought us together and got him comfortable with the idea of VBAC because it has so much helpful statistics around, just how safe it is. And, I think, as you said, there's so many scare tactics, but when you see data on paper in front of you, it just helps ease that fear. So highly recommend it. So sorry to jump in.
No, I love it. I love it. And why don't we just segue right into your amazing birth journeys? I mean, I feel like in ways like I have like each birth, and it's probably with everyone really, we all have each unique birth stories, but I feel like all of your birth stories, they all have like even more unique spins. And so you have like very different things, and each one of them is more, even more amazing. So let's turn the time over to you and share your stories.
Thank you. It feels I'm just so privileged to be here because I listened to every single podcast episode when I was preparing for my VBAC, and I just feel like I know you so well. So it's just such an honor. So thank you so much for having me. To jump right in, and to start the story where it really started, I had a miscarriage before my first birth, and I just think that people who have gone through miscarriages, it's just such a difficult situation and it's such a difficult process. I do think that I was definitely depressed after, and I think having miscarriage before you have kids is so difficult too, because you're questioning, can my body even have a baby, and all sorts of things. And so when I got pregnant with my first baby girl, who made me a mommy, who I wouldn't change anything for the world, she I really was scared. We did not take a single course because when I got pregnant with my miscarriage baby, I like bought all the books and I started planning in my mind. And I think as I got pregnant, I was just scared to jinx it. And I think I really didn't even admit it to myself that I'm pregnant or get attached to that baby. Yeah. Until I was, probably 24 weeks. I remember reading, it was like hit 24 weeks and the baby survival rate was like 90% or something. And I really took like a deep breath. Like, I feel like at that point I was like, oh my God, like I am having a baby. And so I think a lot of things that, I did differently with my preparing for my VBAC were complete opposite with my first birth. I, trusted the provider right away. I sort of fell into this. I was living in New York City. I've lived in New York City for 15 years at the time. And my OB had a practice in this, in the floor above her that was delivering babies. And she's like, okay, that's where you go. And turned out the practice was pretty desirable. And, I didn't know the questions to ask. And I just sort of, as you said early on, like trusted that, we all delivered babies and that I will know what to do when it all happened.
Right.
We kind of looked at having a doula and we sort of thought it was this boho thing to do. And we were, two professionals in New York, and we're like, whatever, we know we have doctors, we were delivering at NYU. And so, it was this sort of fear of losing the baby and not believing that we are pregnant, and then trusting the system, trusting that they have the best interests in mind and that everything will be done. And then the other thing I think is like, there's so much just pressure around you that it's like 40 weeks. Everybody's like, it's 9 months. I've never even knew that people go past their due date ever. Like, I don't know, like I'm a fairly educated person, but I've never heard anything. And to be fair, I did not take any courses or anything with my first because I was just so scared of the jinxing of having a baby. And that I literally was, here we are, like about to go birth. I'm 40 weeks. On the 40 weeks, I was just like, oh my God, the baby's not here. And my husband has 2 sisters and they all delivered pretty early in the digestion. So they were like, be prepared. So at 32 weeks, I wrote a transition plan in my office. Everybody was ready. And I'm like, here we are 2 months later, and still no baby. And the other thing is my daughter is named after my grandma, who is just the closest person on earth for me. She's no longer with us. And she was born on January 1st. And my due date, I think, was January 4th. And so I was like, sure, I would be birthing on January 1. And I think I mentally prepared myself. So when that didn't happen, and then the due date came, there's no baby, I'm like, what is going on? And I gained quite a lot of weight because I felt like it was like a free pass to eat whatever I wanted to.
Oh man, right here.
Oh yeah.
That's what happened with me
That's
too.
you, yeah. And also I was in New York City. They were so scared of me falling on ice that they wouldn't let me working out. I also had some sort of previous situations where I was sort of put on no working out starting second trimester and no sex. And so, and I mean, there's nothing scary. I had 2 LEEP procedures. I had precancer cells early on. And so they cut those out. And so like, they were worried that the cervix wouldn't hold the baby. So they're like, don't work out, don't do this. So I'm like, I'm not naturally working out because I'm not walking because it's winter in New York City. I am then, going and like, not doing anything. And so gaining weight and eating whatever I want. And it's also did not know anything about baby positioning. So I'm like lying in the corner of my couch every night, basically encouraging my baby to be OP, which we will talk about, I think, as I prepared for my second birth. And so I got sciatica or whatever it's called. Actually,
Sciatica?
Sciatica, yeah.
Which is
And
miserable.
So it was on my due date. I was actually at a museum with my husband and my mom because we were so amateur. We flew my mom in at 39 weeks to help us. And here we are, no baby. And you're like, what are we doing? And both of us are working crazy hours. I was in the office the day before I delivered. So, sort of there was no mental preparation. It was sort of like this was happening to me and I wasn't in control of the process whatsoever. And I was letting all these things happen to me. And so the doctor was like, oh, you should go take a bath. And so I went in and took a bath. And when I was in the bath, there was some sort of liquid that came out. And as pregnant women know, there's just stuff that happens to our body. So I didn't think anything of it. Except later on, I called him and I was like, hey, the leg didn't get better. I couldn't walk basically the last few days of my pregnancy. And I was like, the leg didn't get better, but like my underwear just keeps getting wet. And she's like, well, your bladder probably broke. And so you have to come to the hospital within 12 hours. And so the 12 hours was supposed to be like 3 a.m. And I was like to my husband, like, let's just sleep more. There's, and so at 6 a.m. we go to the hospital. They test my underwear and they're like, oh yeah, your water did break. They admit me to the hospital. And then there's no contractions, nothing. And then the woman, another doctor comes in and she checks my water levels through an ultrasound. And she's like, oh no, there's so much water. Your water didn't break. But now you're here, you admit it. So you're going to stay and we will induce you. To be fair, they did give me an option of whether to be induced or not, but it wasn't like when you're uneducated, like everything being positioned to you are very much like, this is what you do next, as opposed to like, here's the risks, here are the benefits. And so because I was in so much pain, I couldn't really walk and I was ready. I felt so ready. And also mentally, like my mother-in-law was there. My mom was just like, we just sent her back. It just like, I felt like so much pressure on me to go deliver this baby as opposed to waiting for this natural moment of her being ready. And also they were so worried about infection because they did think the water was breaking first. And then they kind of put this fear in me. So long story short, they start me on Pitocin. And I think they did a Foley bulb in me that fell out. And so at 4 centimeters, I get an epidural. And again, everything is positioned like this is what you do. And I was also very like natural during pregnancy. I didn't drink coffee. I was just so thoughtful about it that at that point, I'm like, give me all the drugs. Like I was so scared of this birth, and we'll talk later, like how my attitude sort of shifted for this experience. But there I was like, give me all the drugs. So they put me in an epidural. I'm like rotating. They were like sort of, oh, we'll see you in the morning. But I did dilate from 6 to 10 centimeters in an hour. And so they were like,
which is amazing.
That was awesome. But they were like, oh, I'm telling the nurse, I'm like, I have to go poop or like I have to push. And she's like, no, that's not possible. So I had to a little bit advocate for myself for them to check me. And then they checked me and they're like, oh my God, yes, that's true. And so they checked me, I'm 10 centimeters and here we go, time to push. And I pushed for 3.5 hours and the baby was OP. They did break my water at 4 centimeters, which is probably why I dilated so fast. Nobody checked the baby positioning. She was really, really high up, OP. And I know all of this thanks to the course that I did with you, because after the course, I did request my operating notes. And that's all the things that I was able to learn and in those operating notes. And I remember making that call was so scary after. But After 3.5 hours, I was okay. My epidural didn't work. It stopped working and I was feeling all the pain. And I will say that Pitocin contractions are so brutal. There's no break for a woman. Again, now that I've experienced the natural labor, it's just so different.
It's very different. Yeah.
Very different. Yeah.
Yeah. They're in a whole different ballpark. Like
Absolutely.
Pitocin versus
Yes.
like natural Pitocin.
Exactly. And so when there's 3 times in my labor that I truly thought I was going to die. Actually, I had this out of body experience where I wanted to move. My body was screaming, move. And they wouldn't let you because I had an epidural. And I was lying down and my body took over and I got on my knees and my fours. And that sadly was already 3 hours into pushing, but I was still willing to push more. I was, so committed, and the doctor sort of positions like, no. I did ask her for 30 minutes more, and the baby would come down as I was pushing, and then she would come back up because she was stuck. There was no lubricant. Yep. They broke my water. And again, now knowing everything, I'm so glad whoever is listening to this episode, like everything I've learned and educated myself worth through the course and through listening to the podcasts. But here I am, really traumatic birth in a sense that they roll me into, 3.5 hours of pushing, 24 hours of labor. I'm exhausted. I develop a fever. By that point, they get the baby out and I'm shaking. So, I literally want to cry, just like flashing back to that experience. Yeah. And lying down there, like, arms strapped, and shaking profusely, and the baby comes out. And of course, you're happy to see a baby who isn't. And they touch the cheek to cheek. They didn't even do skin to skin or anything like that. And the anesthesiologist is like, do you want me to knock you down? And I said, yes, because
you were shaking so bad.
I was shaking so bad. And I remember asking my husband to tell him why he loves me and how we met. And and he was just sitting there next to me, just like telling me the story of, how we met and why he fell in love with me, because I just wanted to make it all sort of worth it. I don't know what was going on through that, but him telling me that story is what kind of started to calm me down. But I wanted to get knocked down. I was shaking. I was cold. The experience is not what I've later loved about delivering vaginally. And I also felt like those things were done to me as opposed to my body birthing my child. I remember a few days after, I didn't even see my baby. So they took her to NICU because I had a fever. They had put her on antibiotics. She also had jaundice. And, everybody was like texting us like, oh, did you have the baby? What's the baby's name? And honestly, didn't feel like I had the baby. You still have the tummy. You just lying there, and in New York, I really hope nobody delivers, but you like kind of like in inhumane conditions, you're like next to other people who maybe have their baby and you're like sharing a room. And it's really crazy. And I just felt like I didn't know if I delivered the baby. I didn't know any of those things. And it was not a pleasant experience. And, we sort of, my girlfriends were asking me after, and they're like, oh, you're going to have more kids. And at that point I was like, no, I don't think I'm going to have any more kids. And, it felt like my body failed me, which, unfortunate to say, but in reality is I failed my body partially too, because I wasn't prepared to advocate for myself. But that was a really traumatic experience, traumatic for my husband, traumatic for me. And I, part of it was not being educated, not knowing a lot, and letting somebody else decide for what is right for me. But I did have a beautiful baby girl
and her name's Lara.
Her name is Lara. She's named after my grandma. And, she was born on January 7th. And it's, she made me a mommy, and I will forever be grateful to her for that. When she was 1, I got pregnant with my little Frankie, and she was basically a COVID baby. So I decided that I'm going to step down. I had a really intense job. As I said, I worked right before I delivered my baby. I went back to work 4 days after. It definitely took me, like literally on the day of C-section, I come home and, I had a call with investors and things like that. And a lot of it was self-imposed. Like, I think it did take me a minute to figure out that I'm a parent and that, things have changed, and I'm a very driven person, as many people are. And I just felt like a little bit disconnected in that moment from my body and my birth and realizing all that stuff. And so I went back to work. I had the most amazing nanny who helped me, and my mom was there. So I felt very supported. But my C-section recovery was brutal. I had to sleep sitting up, like I couldn't lie down. I don't know now why that was. I was on all these drugs, like I just was in so much pain. And again, it's like, I don't wish C-section on anybody. I do think it saves lives, and I think there is a place for it, absolutely. And I think it's the most amazing invention, but I don't think it should be as widely used as it is today on just anybody, when you get bored. And I later learned that my doctor was like about to change shift, and she just was ready for me to get this going, and so I love when you guys talk about like failure to progress is failure to wait. I mean, obviously mine wasn't about failure to progress, but it is partially failure to wait, you know, and also not letting my body move around and get this baby in the position that my body needed to be in,
Yeah. Hey guys, so I have a confession to make. I am obsessed with the sauna. It is my favorite way to end a workout, and now I get to do it from home. Higher Dose's best-selling portable infrared sauna blanket makes it easy to get my sauna fix from anywhere. Especially during these colder months, it's been so nice to just lay down, get inside the blanket, turn up the heat, and sweat it out. Infrared therapy instantly boosts blood flow, flooding your body with the benefits like radiant, youthful skin, higher energy, boosted mood, and decreased bloat. And for those of you who want to experience the benefits of infrared without the sweat, they also have a really cool line of infrared PEMF mats that recharge your cells to help you feel relaxed, grounded, and rejuvenated. They come in 2 sizes. It is game-changing. I have loved my sauna blanket, and I know you will too. Higher Dose offers payment plans starting as low as $50 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Get your own today at higherdose.com. You can use promo code VBAC. That is going to get you 15% off. It's going to be at higherdose, HIGHERDOSE.com/VBAC.
And so fast forward, here I decided that I was going to travel. I was going to take a year off. I worked really crazy, no vacations for many years. And then I decided to take a year off and travel. And of course you plan and the life happens. COVID happens. I get pregnant, and I was going to travel with my one little girl. But I definitely wanted my kids to be close in age. And we got pregnant, and we found out it's a little girl. COVID pregnancy is definitely a challenge, and I think you widely covered it. Husband couldn't go there, and you don't have support, you don't have as much self-care. I think it's different today, but we were really early in COVID. And at the time I lived in New York City, and it was very, very scary to be there. And so we moved in literally the 4 days. My girlfriend who lived in New York City, who lived in LA, was like, stay in my house. We are going up to San Francisco because my parents need to help with childcare. And so we moved in 4 days.
I love it.
We told the movers, just go towards the LA. We're going to find an apartment. And it was an incredible decision for us because in COVID, I was able to be active and the weather was nice. My toddler could, run around and explore. And that was a really wonderful decision. I ended up working through COVID because the situation was so volatile that my board sort of asked me to stay. And I did end up stepping down a month before my baby was born. But even though I was working, I was sort of like my husband always laughs, like a type A student. I took VBAC as, something that I was gonna, really learn a lot about and feel very prepared. I took the class with you. I got a doula who also was a VBAC mama. I know you guys have a directory of VBAC trained doulas, and I think that's so, so important. And so my doula was incredible. I started preparing mentally and physically. I, read a lot about spinning babies and really getting baby into the optimal position. I walked for 3 miles. I ran for as long as I could, and then I walked for 3 miles at the end. It was sort of a ritual that my husband and I did. We would put our toddler to bed, and we would just walk around, our house. And it was our moment for each other, but also to bring us together and talk about the VBAC and talk about sort of us preparing. And so, those months preparing for the VBAC were what I should have done probably, with my first. But you live and you learn. And I'm so grateful that I've had all of these experiences. And I stayed active. I learned a lot. I listened to the podcast. I took the course. The podcast, every time I would go to either chiropractor or my doctor, I would just listen to an episode. And one advice that I have, and I know we haven't talked about giving advice to people, but I would save my favorite episodes. So at the end, my last months, I only stayed in positive space. I only listened to the episodes that I saved. So there was an episode that you guys had, a woman from Atlanta who also had a breech birth, because by that time I already knew that I was having breech. And she had it out of Atlanta. She's like a wife of a football maybe guy.
Yep.
I don't remember her name, but that episode I re-listened. I probably listened to it like 10 to 20 times in the last months just to channel like that positivity with my third baby, which we'll talk about in a second. I also had a few episodes that were like sort of relevant to me. And I just felt like re-listening to them all the time was a really helpful thing for me, at least. And that's my advice is like save your favorites so that you can easily, channel them and listen to them.
Love that.
And I also would send to my husband the episodes that I wanted him to hear. I mean, very curated. I would be like, listen to this girl. Like she pushed for a long time too, or whatever, so that he's comfortable, but he also knew sort of what to do and how to get comfortable. Sort of by that end of August, my baby was born end of September. By that end of August, I stepped down from my job. And again, I feel very privileged that I was able to do that. I know a lot of people have to work till the last moment. But even if you have to work till the last moment, I think carving out space for yourself and your baby and connecting with them, it's so, so valuable, whether it's when the toddler is napping or, when your husband comes home, even if it's like that 3-mile walk around the neighborhood. I just think that we expect our bodies and ourselves to just like go with this birth. Like, no, it's like a big thing in our lives. Like, let's give it the attention that it deserves. And so I really eliminated anything that the last month was just so spiritual for me. And really, like, I think surrender is like the word that I wrote above my bed. And by the way, anytime I would have like things that you guys would say, or I learned like eat before you, like I would write in big letters and like put this flashcards next to my bed so that I remind myself, like, I think I still have it. And so I just always, and by the way, eat before you go to the hospital was my big one.
Yes.
And the couple of things, I know some people consider like home birth. For me, hospital was a no-brainer. Like I actually, even though I had this traumatic birth, luckily I was now in a different city. So the hospital was different. I didn't have those negative associations with this hospital. But for me, hospitals actually make me feel safe because I feel like if I need help, there's care just seconds away. Which we will talk about it, kind of how that played into my birth as it unfolded later on. But sort of we never even contemplated the idea of a hospital birth. But as I moved to LA, as I said, I was staying at my friend's house and I pinged her about who her OB was. The one thing that was really, really important to me was having the same person who sees me deliver the baby. Yeah. And so that I really knew was important to me because the first practice was rotating practice. And I kind of felt lost in this, thing because I would see different providers at different times. And I felt like there was no consistency of advice or thoughts. It was just sort of like everybody would give you these different things. And so even before I found my amazing provider who I ended up with, even before that, the few places that I called, I was always asking, and I did decide not to go with a few practices because they were on a rotating schedule. And so the woman I found who was absolutely lovely, and I think was probably VBAC friendly as opposed to VBAC supportive, she, at least she wanted to position herself as a VBAC supportive, but I could tell that she was more of a VBAC friendly side, but she was delivering all her patients. And that was important to me. And so when my baby consistently was showing up breech, I was, I think, 30 weeks. And I was like, well, I know you keep saying that it's still okay. The baby might turn. But if the baby continues to be breech, can I still have a VBAC? And at that point, she said, no, it's hospital policy. Mind you, I delivered breech VBAC at that same hospital. She said, it's hospital policy to do breech via C-section. And so I said, well, thank you. And through your podcast, I already listened to women who delivered breech vaginally. And so I started looking for a provider. And I see Dr. Berlin, who I think you've had on the podcast for chiropractic care.
He's so amazing. So amazing.
I love him so much. And so when I found him through my doula, I was like, Dr. Berlin, she continues to be British. She's like, oh, then you see Dr. Brock. I was like, what? Do you see Dr. Brock? Who's Dr. Brock? And then I went and listened to his podcast. He has a podcast as well called Informed Pregnancy with Dr. Brock. And as I was driving home and I listened to a Breech VBAC, I think Breech Birth with Dr. Brock, I just loved him. He was totally like straight shooter, just like me. And I was like, this is going to be my doctor. And then making that phone call to him and be like, will you take me? I'm 34 weeks, was really scary. And he's like, absolutely. And it was so empowering. And I saw him and he's just amazing. And so I switched my care at 34, maybe I was 35 weeks to Dr. Brock in LA. Sorry, he delivers at Cedars. And again, that other doctor was saying it's a hospital policy not to do breech. Guess what? Dr. Brock delivered at the same hospital, a Breech VBAC. And so when baby continues to be breech, I think at 36, he does an ultrasound to confirm the position. And he's honestly was like the most informed decision. He said, you have 3 options. You can have a C-section if you want, and here's the risks. You can have an ECV and try to turn the baby. Mm-hmm. And you can just not have an ECV and you can have a Breech VBAC. And so I guess the 4 options is like you can have ECV and still decide to do C-section.
Right.
You don't have to do ECV and, you can have C-section or you can have vaginal birth. So I wanted to try to turn the baby. I had a ECV. Dr. Brock has a pretty high chance of turning at ECV. I also did acupuncture, moxibustion, I did it all. I had Dr. Berlin, who is known to turn babies, do all his magic. I did spinning babies. I did the ice over my belly. She's stubborn. She was stubborn in my tummy. Yeah. She's so stubborn still. And she was really wedged down in my pelvis. She was really low, really early in my pregnancy. So she was like
not moving.
Breech. Yeah, she was not going to change. And, she wanted her own story. And I will say that women who have breech babies, just have to remind themselves, breech is a variation of normal. Like that saying, I just kept almost like a mantra, like breech is a variation of normal, breech is a variation of normal. And just reminding myself that this is just a variation of normal, that's okay to have a breech, babe. Of course, I was nervous,
right.
I think it adds complications. And Dr. Brock was terrific at explaining all the risks. The bottom line is the risks of breech are very different than the risks of VBAC. And they don't add up. They're just different. It's not like the Breech VBAC is scarier or more difficult. It's that, they just each have their own fears. And so we've decided to do Breech VBAC, and Dr. Brock is super expert in that, and we felt really supported. It did change a few things. So I really wanted an unmedicated VBAC because my epidural failed with my first. And I also never wanted Pitocin, and I just wanted to move around. There's something I learned, which is a walking epidural, which I actually did not use, but my hospital, Cedars, offer. And for anybody listening, they should learn about walking epidural. It sounds like a way better option than just the regular epidural, but everybody have their own choice, obviously. And the walking epidural allows you to move around. That's my understanding.
It's a lighter dose. It's technically a lighter dose. So it means like what you were saying, like you were fighting the urge to move with your first one, and your body just took over and you went hands and knees. Like with a walking epidural, it's lighter. You're able to feel a little bit more, but still not feel everything. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? So yeah.
And so my I was so scared about the positioning and everything as well. So I wanted to move. I wanted an unmedicated VBAC, but as we learned that she was breech, my doctor's rules were you had to get an epidural for the delivery stage, which I also didn't know that pushing and delivery are 2 different stages. So for him, you can push without epidural, but as it came time to deliver the baby, there was a chance in breech that he had to maneuver the baby, and he needed the mother to stay completely still, obviously, because my understanding that with breech, the biggest risk is that if the butt comes out and it's so big that it blocks the cord and there's no air coming into the baby's head, right? So he, at that moment, had to maneuver and deliver the baby right away fully. and he could not have the mother move around. And that's obviously worst case scenario. And that's why you want to have a provider who is obviously very experienced. So I knew that I will have an epidural. So I get to the hospital. So long story short, here we are. I'm mentally prepared. I have my amazing provider. I've studied with you guys. I listened to all the podcasts, and it's Friday. I'll like never forget. My husband he's like, I'm going to go golf. Are you okay with that? I'm 39 plus 2 days. And as a reminder, my first baby was late. So I was like, fine, Oh, actually, after the ECV, I do have to say, he did check me, and I was at 37 and a half weeks. I was 4 centimeters dilated.
Okay. So your body was doing some prep.
Yeah. So I was already 4 centimeters dilated, but my doctor told me, and I think I was like 50%, maybe 80% effaced. And he was saying to me, well, guess what? With the second baby, you can go for weeks like that. So that was a good reminder, no, don't freak out. But I still put everybody on alert,
Yeah.
And then the other thing I did the last month is like, I really stopped talking to anybody negative, even close people in my life. So I do recommend like sort of creating and being your own advocate. Like, what do you need? Like, I needed a positive space, a healthy, happy. I did not listen to any podcast that I didn't pre-approve in my prep before. I was just sort of in this like happy, protective space, I wasn't reading the news. Like, I really kind of isolated myself in this happy things and hang out with my toddler. And, as I said, I stepped down from work and like really had the space to prepare. Yeah. I got my own gown for the hospital. I got my own socks for the hospital. I got an IV band that said I can do this to remind myself and really cover, because I didn't want to get an IV, but my hospital still required me to get
especially with VBAC.
Yeah, exactly. So, I wanted to cover that because I wanted to be in this like special mental space. And so my husband is like, oh, I'm going to go golf. I'm like, no problem. Like, it's a Friday, go golf. And I was kind of feeling yucky. And like, I texted my girlfriend. Yeah. But I didn't take it as a sign at all. I was like, because I didn't feel great with my first baby at the end. So I figured it's just like sort of I'm getting so late in the pregnancy. Yeah. And so I remember texting my girlfriend. I'm like, do you remember feeling yucky at the end? And she's like, I really don't. I'm like, I'm feeling so kind of yucky today. And then I had like a work call. I took the call. And as I'm like starting to sort of like have this leakage in my underwear, and I like texted my doula, and she's like, well, just put a pad on it. Sorry, TMI.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, I put a pad in it, which I wouldn't have even thought. Like, I am such a big advocate for doulas. My doula, Elizabeth, from, I think it's like Luma Birth now, but used to be Grace and Gratitude. She is just so incredible. And so I basically went in and put the pad in, and it like kept sort of soaking, but super slow. And from the listening to your guys' podcast and from all the studies, you always say like, if water breaks, if you're staying in your own environment with your own bacteria, there's really not high risk of infection. Just like, don't go outside. And so I was like, okay, I'll stay home even if the water broke. And then literally I'm in the middle of this work call, and it dawns on me, oh my God, what if it's different with Breech? And so I'm like, freak out. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I have to call you back. Hang up the phone, call my doctor. I'm like, Dr. Brock, there's a small chance my water broke. Like, it's like leaking. It's not like I didn't have a gush or anything like gushing. That. Yeah. And so I'm like, oh my God, do I come see you? It's still Friday. He's like, okay, here's the thing. If your water broke, I'll see you in the 12 to 24 hours because your contractions are going to start. And if your water didn't break, I'll see you Monday for our scheduled appointment. And like, this is incredible. He's so professional. He's done millions of births. He delivers Breech VBAC. And to hear that reassurance from him, he was so calm and collected. This just, again, reminds to everybody, and hope reminds to everybody who is listening, like, if your water breaks, don't worry. Until contractions start, that's like nothing else matters. Your water breaking doesn't mean your labor began, at least in my opinion.
Or it doesn't mean you're going to have a baby at home necessarily either, right? Like, you have to have contractions, push a baby out. You have to be, so it's so hard. And like, I always want to remind people, like, if your heart and your mind, like your whole soul, your intuition is saying you need to go somewhere else, follow it.
Yeah.
But if not, like, you're typically pretty safe just hanging out and waiting for labor to begin.
Totally. And that was so helpful for me that he reassured me. And now looking back, I do think my daughter's water broke partially, but it was just leaking. And I just was rushed to the hospital, like when I did. So, it probably would have like leaked over time. But so that's what's happening. So all day I was kind of feeling yucky. I wasn't having any contractions, at least the ones that I would feel. And again, I've never felt natural contractions, so I wouldn't even know what it was feeling like.
Right.
And so it was all happening. I did have mucus plug, like losing sort of weeks before for 4 weeks or whatnot, And so here I am, I ordered Domino's. I had Pinkberry. I was just like sort of like in this environment. And my daughter, who was at the time 20 months, she knew. She was holding my baby the whole day. And we just had, she was, looking back at the pictures from that day, it was like one of the sweetest days of my life, to be honest. We just like hung out at home, held each other, watched shows, which we almost never watch TV. So it was a really special day. And then my husband came home and I was like, oh, you know what? I'm tired. I'm just going to go resting. And at 1 a.m., I woke up to the bathroom, which, as anybody in the third trimester know, we go to the bathroom a lot at the end. I go in there and I'm on the potty and I sit there and I like almost felt like she just kicked me. And it was this like contract. It was like, now I know it was like such a strong contraction. But then I like moved around literally on the bathroom, and it felt great for me to sit on the bathroom always, like through the whole third trimester. So I did spend a lot of time just like hanging out in the toilet. So I was sitting there and like, I kind of like repositioned myself, and I like got up, and then I just lie down and to go back to bed, didn't think anything of it. And boom, I get another one. And it was like, when people say when contraction starts, like you absolutely know.
Yeah.
On the second contraction, I wake up my husband. I'm like, this is a real deal. And to be fair, for a week before, I did have some Braxton Hicks, which I didn't really have as my first. And I was calling my doula and I'm like, I'm having contractions. And we are walking around. I was like, she's like, okay, how long are they lasting? I'm like, well, I don't know. They fizzle out. She's like, well, that's not a real contraction then.
Yeah.
So, so helpful to have a doula, because you can ask all these questions that are, maybe feel silly, but they're not, right?
Well, and help you avoid from going in if you don't need to go in, and like having to call a doctor to get a question. Like, it just helps. Yeah.
Totally. And so here I woke up my husband. I'm like, I know it's real. We call my doula. She's like, well, stay at home as long as you want, as long as she's like, I'm going to start sort of getting ready. So this is 1 a.m. So that Friday morning, so call my water breaking at 9 a.m. and leaking. This is 1 a.m. The Saturday morning. And I wake him up, and my doula is like, listen, let your husband sleep so that, he can get rest. And if you can sleep as well. But I was like, I'm not going to be able to sleep. I am calling my girlfriend who's on call to take my baby. She's not picking up the phone, which I'll tell you a funny story. But I'm like, okay, let's keep going here. And so he went to bed in the living room. And about 20 minutes in, I wake him up. I'm like, we have to go to the hospital. But I guess it's not 20 minutes later. It's like probably 4 a.m. And so I just knew at that time that it's like, this is like starting to get real. And I do have to say, like, this birth to me was so spiritual. During my wedding, I honored my grandma. As I already mentioned, I honored my grandma during the naming of my first baby. But I was not sort of thinking about my grandma during this birth and during my prep. She was there. Like, I just know, like, it was so spiritual, this birth. I was preparing by mooing, like, I read Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, which I love that book. And I was practicing to moo. I was practicing to do all these things. I was singing like my grandma would. And so out of nowhere, my singing, and I'm not good. Let me preempt it. I'm not a singer or anything like that. Like, that was such a feeling from within. And then I found, during my wedding, I made this kind of reference to her, like a bracelet. And I found the bracelet and I held it in. And I just have to say, my baby's birth was so spiritual in so many ways. It was one of the most incredible things that ever happened to me. I was in another world. I was truly in another world. And I see sometimes people post on Facebook and ask, how can our body survive without a epidural and all these things? Like, you're not in this world. You're bringing life into this world. This is
Mhm.
incredible. And our bodies can do this because it's not Pitocin contractions. It's
Right.
really your body that creates. And so I was singing through my contractions. I picked up my baby and she was holding me tight and I was having contractions. I was holding her. And, I wasn't even, it just was like such a magical moment to be
Mhm.
bringing another baby. And I was talking to her and I was telling her how we're working as a team.
Oh.
And I had to drop off my daughter. Luckily, my girlfriend gave me the code to her house. Otherwise, they both had their phones off, her husband and her.
No.
So I'm literally walking into their bedroom. It's like 5 a.m. I'm like, here's my baby. Please.
Like, I gotta go.
I gotta go. Yeah. They were like 5 minutes from the hospital.
Oh my gosh.
So we get to the hospital. It's 6 a.m. They check me. I'm 6 centimeters dilated, 100% effaced. And she checks me and they admit me.
Mhm.
And, they then say like, okay, you admitted, go into this, like from the triage. My doula joins me. And I really didn't love the nurse. And my doula is like, don't worry, they change shift at 7. 6:45, I'm like, I have to push. And I'm so grateful my doula was there because she advocated for me. And again, like I was so educated. I thought you could advocate for yourself. No, you cannot. You're in a different world.
Really hard.
It's really hard. So I'm like, Elizabeth, I have to push. I'm on my knees singing through it. And she's like, you have to check her. They're like, no, it's not possible. So the lady comes in, checks me, and she's like, it's not possible. Her water is intact. And then the physician assistant comes in that works for my doctor. And she's like, that's not a water. It's her butt.
Bum. Yeah.
Exactly. So I guess it feels the same to them. And
Squishy.
The water did break. There was no water at that point. It was squishy. Yeah. The crazy thing is, here we are. I'm like ready to push. We need to put epidural in. My doctor is like away because he didn't realize that I will progress so fast. So everybody's waiting for him. Everybody's freaking out. I don't know anything because I'm in this different world. But my husband told me that like everybody's freaking out. There's 100 doctors in there. Breech VBAC. What is
have
going
to see
on?
it.
Yeah. And so until my doctor got there, like my husband always talks about how like once he got there, like the atmosphere was just like, okay, everything is going to be okay. And that's the other thing that you can ask your doctor. Is he going to be there for the whole pushing stage? My doctor, Brock, was there for an hour and a half while I was pushing. And he held my hand and he talked to me. And it was just so incredible. And I did have an epidural. So I dilated to 10 without an epidural, then got an epidural and then pushed for an hour and a half. And I had the most beautiful, amazing baby girl. We named her Frankie because she was Frank Breech.
I love it.
And we were so interested to know, is Frank like the name of the guy who invented Frank Breech? We weren't sure. We later found out that Frank Breech just means stubborn breech.
Oh,
so Frank Breech is like stubborn breech. And so she's so stubborn. She picked her own name. It was already sort of part of our list of names. And so that was the sort of Breech VBAC story. So then when my little stubborn babe, the one thing I do want to kind of mention here is this breech. If your baby is breech for a long time, even if they change head down, make sure you have them checked for hip dysplasia. I do think a lot of people don't know, and I didn't know about this at all. It's completely normal. My baby had hip dysplasia because she was breech basically the whole birth, or the whole, not birth.
Pregnancy.
The whole pregnancy. And this is really important because I think a lot of people confuse. They think that if they had a C-section, their babies wouldn't have hip dysplasia. But that's not the case. It's how the baby is inside of you. Their hips just don't develop. And so, my baby was then placed in a pelvic harness, and that harness imitates what a head down baby does inside your body. And the hip develops normally. And most times it resolves on its own. You still have to follow up. But my recommendation is like, just make sure that you have them checked for it, because I'm on all these Facebook groups with people who didn't get checked. And then they unfortunately have much complicated time fixing it when they're a little bit later. So that was definitely an adjustment, and journey on its own. And when my little baby was 8 months, we got surprised pregnant with our little gift, baby boy. And we always wanted 3 kids. So he just had his own surprise timing. And we did try pretty hard with our first 2 girls. I mean, we didn't use IVF or any of the other procedures, but still it took us a while to get pregnant. And so it was definitely a surprise to be pregnant on our sort of as a surprise. And he is such a miracle. I had a very difficult first trimester. And now thinking back about it, it could have been that he is a boy. I don't know if there's a gender sort of stereotypes in pregnancy, but I had a lot of bleeding. I really thought I lost him a few times. And one of the times was like so much blood. I still cannot believe that he's sort of survived, like such a miracle little baby. I just cannot be happier I cannot be happier just having him. He's my light. He's 9 months actually. So 9 months in, 9 months out.
Crazy.
And yeah, he was, and I had an unmedicated birth with him. I think one of the reasons he wanted to be born so fast is because I think he was scared that Dr. Brock would retire. So he knew that I had to have that birth. And so I got pregnant. Again, I was very, really active. I obviously had 2 little kids who still really needed me. I did walk 3 miles. This was much harder in a sense that there's 2 kids that need you that are so young. But my husband and I both worked as a team. We made sure that, I had the space to, again, you have to advocate for yourself. And I talked to my husband and I said, like, I need this time to walk because that's how I feel like I'm preparing for this birth. And so we hired a doula again. And one thing that I would say is like this time my doula had to be gone at 41 weeks. She had a scheduled vacation. And so I found a backup doula with her help that they partnered together so that if I would go past 41 weeks, which in my book is like a little bit more complicated birth because the baby will be bigger naturally, so I wanted to make sure that I didn't feel rushed. You have to be so thoughtful about ensuring what you need for a good birth. Set yourself up for success. And so I didn't want to have any pressures. And so I had 2 amazing doulas this time. One of them was at my first birth, and the same woman, Elizabeth, ended up to be at this birth too. And I was doing all the same things, chiropractic care, acupuncture, listening to all the podcasts again, because this time it wasn't a breech baby. He was continuing to be head down, and I wanted to have an unmedicated birth. The book that I read both times was In a Maze Guide to Childbirth. And this time, what really stuck out to me was, I don't know if you remember this chapter where she was developing this mantra of, I'm going to be big. And essentially what she was talking about is that you can channel your vagina to open up wider to let your baby out so that you don't have any tears. And I didn't have tears with either of my birth. And I would say that my doctor told me that that's kind of on him. I said to him, Dr. Brock, what can I do to prepare and not have birth, like to have tears? And he said, it's all on me. We have to go nice and slow. And so it was so helpful for me to just channel that mantra. And I did use that during my birth with my son. I'm going to be big. And it also did take my mind off, the ring on fire, all those things that people talk about that could sound scary. I wasn't thinking about that because I was chanting almost like, I'm going to be big. And so long story short, at my 39 weeks appointment, leading up to it again, I was 4 centimeters dilated. And I guess that's how, my body processes it. And we were talking about doing a membrane sweep at 40 weeks. And I was, sort of contemplating whether I wanted to do it or not. I really wanted kind of no interventions birth. And I decided that at 40 weeks, I'll do it. But I was going to my 39-week appointment. And because I was already 4 centimeters dilated, I was a little bit nervous because we lived an hour and a half from the hospital because now we have moved further out. I was a little bit nervous to be driving. So my husband, and also we don't have family living nearby, and my girlfriend could not really take 2 more kids on who are so young. We got a sibling doula. And so our sort of goal with the sibling doula was anytime I had my appointments, she would come and cover the kids at an extra cost, but so that she could get to know them. And so my sibling doula, who was amazing, she was with my kids And so I said to my husband, do you mind driving me? You can take calls while, I'm in my appointments. So he drove me to the hospital. And just in case, we took our bags kind of everywhere, except, and then that's a tip that I actually want to write down to tell people, but except my colostrum, which I'll address in a second. So we took the bags with us, and I had my acupuncture in the morning, and then I had my chiropractor appointment. So I'm like super aligned, go to my OB appointment. And I'm 39+3 or +2 maybe. And he's like, well, you're in labor. You're 6 centimeters dilated. Go to the hospital right now. And he's like, I'm then going to break your water. And to me, that was such a trigger words. Like I didn't, because I felt like my baby got stuck the first time.
Yeah.
And I listened to an episode that you had earlier on at some point. And you said you sort of had a side note around like never let anybody break your water until they check the baby positioning.
Yeah.
So
it's a check mark. You have to like check, like, where are we feeling? What is this position? Where are we at? Like, I mean, if it happens spontaneously, it happens spontaneously, which is
totally.
It did for
then you can
you.
control.
Right.
Yeah.
You did for you the second time, but like kind of the first time is maybe like a 4-bag,
Exactly.
like, and then they broke your main back. But it's so important to cool it and wait.
Totally. And I think something you said, it's like a lubricant for your body. So you need that liquid to be able to have the baby get into the best position possible. And so I was really not into the idea of breaking the water. I walked around, I called my doula. He just said, go to the hospital, I'll call them. And I did take about an hour to decide to go to the hospital. I didn't, even though like this doctor who already delivered my baby, I just still wanted to check in with myself if I was comfortable. At the end of the day, here's what I arrived at. And it's not the right decision for everybody, but for me, it was the right decision to go to the hospital because my other 2 babies, which was my biggest fear. I actually did a fear release as well 2 days before with the technique that you guys shared on the YouTube. There's a YouTube video. And my biggest fear was not taking care of my other girls because they were so young. And my fear was I go in, I had like a whole tree of neighbors who were going to come in until the sibling doula comes in and all those things. And Dr. Brock did say, he's like, your baby is -1 and she already 6 centimeters position. And he's like, I'm not going to make it to the hospital. And I was like, what if I get a hotel room across the street? He's like, you're not going to make it to the hospital. He's like, the baby is low. And so I sort of, decided that for me, for my well-being of being in the right mental space, this is the right time because my babies are taken care of with the sibling doula right there. And so we went to the hospital and he took his time to come in too, which I loved. He gave my body natural time to progress. I requested a pump right away. I was walking, I was bouncing on the ball, I was pumping, trying to get the labor started naturally because there was no contraction still. Which was really frustrating to me, because again, I wanted no interventions.
Yeah.
And so here we are, he comes in and he's like, I'm like, Dr. Brock, give me the answers to 2 questions. Number 1 is, what's the baby positioning? He checks it. It was like LOI. It was like the most perfect
LOI,
position. And number 2, I said, if you break my water and my labor doesn't start, because remember, with my second, when the water broke, it took almost 24 hours to labor start. And I was like, I do not want to feel rushed. I also want to have the chance to leave the hospital if I want to go home and labor at home. And he said, I guarantee you. And I already knew his word is right because he delivered my other baby. So he's like, I guarantee that you can leave the hospital. I can guarantee you that there's no interventions that, we will implement because I also did not want Pitocin at all.
Yeah.
So he breaks my water. I let him break my water and literally things start within a second. I think he broke my water like in an hour and a half later, my baby was there. And so right away, maybe like, 20 minutes later, I was like, I have to poop. And he was there. He's like, do not let her go to the bathroom. And so he's like, checks me. And I was already 8 at that time. So it went pretty fast from 6 to 8 to 10 again. My doula was on the way. And so this time, my husband and we were just such a team. I feel like the first time we were both so scared and we just didn't know and didn't feel yet like sort of comfortable. This time we were swaying together and I just feel like so appreciative of the moment we shared, just 2 of us. And then my doctor comes in and he's like, okay, it's time to bring this baby to the world. Get on your back. I'm like, no, can I please have a few more contractions standing up? And he's like, eventually you'll have to get in bed. And I was like, okay, visit, because I trust my doctor, but I was disappointed for sure. I probably would have loved to be standing, but once I got in bed and lay down, I actually did feel better. Like I did enjoy delivering in that position, but I till the last second.
Yeah.
And then I lie down, and in about 4 pushes, and I kept saying to myself, I'm going to be huge. And I did want to make a joke to my doctor. I'm like, is this too late for an epidural? But I didn't say it because you're kind of in a different world. You're almost like in your own little world. I delivered my baby boy without any medication. And I have to say the recovery, even like with epidural for pushing, like the recovery with unmedicated birth is the most surreal thing on the planet. And with Breech, so many people ran into it right away to check her.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing that people may not know about Breech is when the baby's coming down, there's always the poop, the meconium from the baby.
Yeah.
So like my doctor was was telling the nurses, like, this is normal. Like, you don't need to freak out. Because I think with head down baby, they're worried about meconium being in the water. With Breech baby, it's always in because they're pushing on the stomach and as the butt comes out. And so here they left us alone for 2 hours. I was telling Dr. Brock, I'm like, how big is the baby? He's like, well, you can't have it all. He's like, we haven't even weighed him. Like, he's like, I don't know how big he is. He ended up being 8 pounds, 2 ounces, which they did for 2 hours. Nobody bothered us. We were just like in this peaceful moment with my husband and I. And like, it sort of came full circle from like all the interventions and everybody there and not having a moment to ourselves to like just being there by ourselves, the 3 of us, and having this most incredible, peaceful experience. As it was really something. And I really wish to everybody to experience that. The recovery, again, I was ready to go hiking that afternoon. It was like so different. And I think I did push myself a little too much right away, primarily because I have 2 little young kids. But it's good to also let yourself recover. But it was so special to have this. And last thing that I will say is breastfeeding was really important to me. And I had challenges in the past. And so I had an amazing lactation consultant who I saw at 37 weeks. I also took some breastfeeding classes, but she told me about expressing colostrum starting early on. And after 37 weeks, it's safe because baby is sort of technically full term. And I bought this colostrum that I froze. And so starting 37 weeks, and the other thing is the lactation consultant didn't say this, but we know that nipple stimulation is like a good thing too. And I kind of think it's an inducer. Exactly. So every day, and I would say it was amazing for my older kids to see me sort of do things with my breast without the baby there. So they weren't hating on the baby for taking my attention away. I would just sit there in the playroom with them while they would play. And I would say to them, oh, this is how mommy will feed the baby. And I would express colostrum. And I froze so much colostrum. I mean, every day. I honestly wish I did more of it, because as you sort of deliver this baby, like there's not yet milk, you can take that day to like recover and sleep if your partner is there. My baby had jaundice, so we had to have him under lights. So like the nurses would take him, but I was able to give him colostrum. And with jaundice, it's very important that they're eating a lot. I didn't have to give him any formula because they had so much colostrum, and I just highly, highly, highly recommend it too. And my sister was able to go back. As I said, we didn't take it with us. She and her boyfriend went back and brought it to the hospital frozen. And check obviously with your hospital what the policy is. Cedar's allowed for you to bring it. It was so great because it allowed my body to rest for the first 24 hours, my baby to get a lot of colostrum. And I didn't have the pressure of like immediately breastfeeding or all of those things because I had it frozen. And I think the breast stimulation actually helped my body dilate, to 6 centimeters by the time I was 39 weeks, which I think was obviously awesome. Naturally.
I love
That's
that.
it. That's my story. Yeah. And I have 3 amazing kids, and they make me a person I am. And I'm just so grateful to them for choosing me to be their mommy.
Being a mom, it really is amazing. And I love that all of your stories, like you have like cesarean, medicated breech, unmedicated, and like each one just morphed you into this person and this parent that you are today. So first of all, congratulations on all of your babies, and thank you for sharing. Just along the way, I kind of just, I wanted to like give a little bullet point of things to maybe remind people of, and maybe, I'm sure this podcast will be one of those saved episodes for the future. But some really cool things that you brought up is the sibling doula. I have been a doula for people and they've had sibling doulas, and it is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It brings so much comfort, because when you have to feel like you have to be mom, it's really hard to be in labor world, right? And to be doing that. So I love that you had a sibling doula. I love that we talked about breaking water. It's something that I am passionate about. And I think it's because my first two, although they didn't break my water, it broke spontaneously, but I had poor position baby and lack of knowledge of getting baby in a better position. But I love that we talked about that. So if you're not checking the box of, hey, my contraction pattern's good, I'm close, like I have good head compression, my baby's in a good spot, it may not be the most ideal position or thing to do, break your water. And then sometimes you break your water and it's like game changer. And that is the best choice for you. So I love that you talked about that. I love to talk how you talked about not preparing and then preparing. And I love so much that in the end of your pregnancy, your second, that you kind of went into this space of like, it's called the bubble, right? We go into our bubble and we like get rid of all of the negativity, all of the hate, all of the news and the stuff that's going to stress us out and all of that. And like, I had to personally do that, unfortunately, with my mom. And that was really, really difficult. And it's really hard to do something, to do that to someone that you love. But unfortunately, she was bringing negativity into my space. And so remember to protect your space. And those people love you and they're going to hate you. They're not going to never talk to you again, but it's okay to like turn social media off, turn text messages off, and go into that space, because if you can enter that space in that like really amazing, powerful zone, it can make all the world a difference. So anyway, and then you educated and you listen to the podcast and so many amazing things. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. And I can't wait I'm so happy that this one is kicking off the holiday season for us.
I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for doing this and, starting the VBAC link. It's just such an incredible resource. And I wouldn't definitely not have had the birth I've had if it wasn't for you guys. Oh,
well, thank you so much.
Interested in sharing your VBAC story on the podcast? Submit your story at thevbaclink.com/share. For information on all things VBAC, including online and in-person VBAC classes, the VBAC blog, and Julie and Megan's bios, head over to thevbaclink.com. Congratulations on starting your journey of learning and discovery with the VBAC Link.